Your money is not where you think it is, and the truth is far more dangerous than you expect. What you see on your screen is not stored wealth. It is a number that only exists as long as the system agrees.
Banks do not hold your money in full. In fact, most of it is already somewhere else.
The moment you deposit money, it stops being yours in the way you think.
The system only works because everyone believes the money will still be there when they need it.
The real shift happens the moment a loan is approved, because that is when new money quietly enters the system.
No cash moves, no vault opens, and yet the balance suddenly exists as if it was always there.
This is not money being transferred. This is money being created at the moment of agreement.
And once that money is created, it does not stay in one place. It begins to move and multiply.
What starts as a single loan quickly expands into something much larger, far beyond the original amount.
The system now depends on something fragile, because once money is created, it must keep moving. If borrowing slows down, the system does not stabilize. It begins to shrink.
And when that contraction begins, liquidity starts to disappear in places you cannot immediately see.
The system does not break instantly. It stretches first, silently, under pressure.
And all it takes is a small shift in confidence for that pressure to become something else entirely. What you are seeing as money is not stored value. It is debt that has not been repaid yet. Every dollar in circulation exists because someone, somewhere, owes it back to the system. If that debt disappears, the money disappears with it, because they are the same structure.
This is why the system cannot remain still. It must continuously expand just to stay alive.
And the moment that expansion slows down, the system begins to turn against itself. When the system slows, it doesn't just pause, it begins to react to its own pressure.
Credit begins to tighten quietly, not everywhere at once, but in specific parts of the system.
As pressure builds, borrowers begin to feel it first, long before the system shows visible cracks. When repayments slow down, the system begins to lose the flow it depends on.
And once those gaps begin to form, the system no longer moves as one. It begins to fracture. And then it starts quietly, small withdrawals, almost unnoticeable at first. But behavior changes faster than data. People act before the system can fully respond.
And once doubt enters the system, it spreads faster than any form of stability.
One reaction leads to another, and suddenly, the system is no longer controlling the flow.
And by the time the system reacts, the movement has already spread too far to contain.
And then, almost suddenly, individual withdrawals begin to align into something much larger.
What was scattered behavior now begins to look like a coordinated demand for access.
As more people demand their money, the system begins to lose what it never fully had.
This is the moment the system is pushed beyond its design limits,
It's critical. We're losing power.
and it starts to show.
And once control begins to slip, the system is no longer leading, it is reacting.
And in that moment, the system reveals what it was never designed to show. There was never enough liquidity for everyone, because it was never meant to be tested all at once. The demand is real, but the supply was always limited beneath the surface.
And as that gap widens, the system stops behaving as a single structure. This is where the illusion fully breaks, and the system can no longer hide what it is.
And just as the system begins to fracture, control mechanisms move in to stabilize what they can.
Liquidity is introduced back into the system, but not evenly, and not without consequences.
The system appears to recover, but underneath, the imbalance has only shifted.
Control is no longer immediate. Every action now arrives just a moment too late.
And the more the system tries to correct itself, the more unstable it becomes. At first glance, it looks like the system is recovering, but the movement feels different.
The stability you are seeing is no longer organic. It is being forced into place. Beneath that controlled surface, instability is still moving, just out of view.
And slowly, confidence begins to return, but it is built on a system that has already shifted. The system appears calm again, but the cost of that stability is now buried deeper than before. What you are seeing now is not recovery. It is the system buying time it no longer truly has.
The structure still stands, but it is no longer supported in the same way it once was. The system does not forget stress. It carries it forward, even when everything looks calm.
And as stability is forced, risk is not removed. It is compressed into smaller, less visible spaces.
And this is where the system becomes something else, no longer stable, but carefully controlled instability. And behind that controlled instability, there is something else, something actively holding the system together.
They do not control the money directly. They control the conditions that decide how it moves.
And by adjusting those conditions, they influence everything without ever appearing in the system itself.
Stability is no longer natural. It is being maintained constantly against the direction of the system.
And even that control has limits, because it is holding back something that cannot be removed.
And the more pressure builds, the harder it becomes to maintain the illusion of control.
And when that delay becomes visible, the system begins to move on its own again. This is the point where stability can no longer be maintained, only delayed. And once that threshold is crossed, the system is no longer correcting, it is unraveling. The system was never designed to withstand this level of pressure, only to function under normal conditions.
It was built to grow, to expand, but not to contract under its own weight.
And that is why what you are seeing is not a failure, it is a natural consequence of the system itself.
The system continues to operate, but no longer in the way it was originally intended.
And at this point, the question is no longer if the system will hold, but how long it can continue.
Once you understand how the system truly works,
It becomes difficult to see it the same way again.
The system will continue to operate. Transactions will go through, balances will still appear.
But beneath that normality, the structure that supports it has already changed.
And when the system is tested again, the outcome may not follow the same pattern.
the system works until it doesn't. And when it fails, It does not fail slowly.